Well, hi and greetings from Northern Michigan. This is Bob the Science Guy. You know, on April 1st, I found myself not having anything in particular to do, so I popped on YouTube and just kind of surfed around a little bit, and I found that Nathan Oakley himself was having a live show. Now, recently, my friend Conspiracy Catz had a show celebrating his 20,000th subscriber. And one of the things that we wanted to do was ask Nathan Oakley to tell us about diffraction. So I was on it, Craig from Fight the Flat Earth, MC Toon, quite a few of us were on there asking Nathan to describe and explain diffraction to us. Well, they were talking about f-stops on cameras and apertures and horizons, so I thought I'd call in and see whether or not maybe I could maneuver the conversation a little bit into diffraction. As always, I try and start off very nice and put it on him to start being a jerk. Generally, I'm not disappointed, and this was no exception. Let's have a listen. I really lucked out because he actually started bringing up the Rolly Criterion almost immediately, and God, it was just Christmas.
Sorry, Bob. You appreciate that the Rayleigh Criterion would calculate the diffraction limit, the point that things disappear into the distance, or a hair disappears because you're too far for the resolution of the hair.
Yeah, Rayleigh's criteria has to do primarily with being able to tell two things apart.
Yeah, the point where it's interfering, i.e. diffracting.
Yeah.
Right. So you appreciate that is a calculation for how things can disappear into the distance, correct?
Okay, so I can apply
I'm just
the
waiting for a
Rayleigh
yes
criteria.
or a no. Is that an okay yes or an okay no? Do you appreciate that is a calculation for how things can disappear into the distance? Do you
Yes.
appreciate? You do appreciate that?
Yeah.
Can you show
of course
me?
I do.
Can you show me in any curve calculator where that formulation is taken into consideration, please?
Well, I'm not really interested in curve calculators
I am.
right now. What I'm
This is a
trying
flat
to do
Earth
is
debate.
I'm trying to figure
This is a
out.
flat Earth debate.
I'm trying to figure out how
It's a flat
I
Earth
can
debate.
predict
You've asked us enough
how much
questions
of
about
something will be
f-stops. Now I'm
distant.
asking you something, Bob. I would like
Sure, go
you,
ahead.
given that you understand the Rayleigh Criterion and its significance in respect to things disappearing with distance, to show me in any calculation for your model of a globe that you believe you live on where that is taken into consideration, please.
It's not,
Why not?
because it's basically based on triangles.
Sorry.
It,
It's based on triangles. We have a formula that you are aware of that takes into effect things disappearing with distance, and a calculation for things disappearing with distance doesn't take it into account. So, Bob the Fallacy Guy, you have confirmed for my audience that the calculation for your reified sphere world that we absolutely do not live on does not account for the calculation for things disappearing into the distance, which would be the Rayleigh Criterion.
Now, the really funny thing about this April Fool's Day prank that I played on him was that at this point I had what I needed. He started talking about the Rayleigh Criterion, and then he went on to a 60-second dissertation about what a jerk I was, how I was Bob the Fallacy Guy, how we don't live on spheres, just a lot of personal attacks. He doesn't realize that I disconnected the call almost immediately as soon as he started with the attacks. And then he continued on for over 60 seconds.
Criterion. Why? Why not? Does he run away?
Yeah, he left.
Oh my God. So he's realised that by conceding that he understands the Rayleigh Criterion and that it absolutely deals with things disappearing into the distance, and conceding that it does not get accounted for in the global mathematics, he's performed one of the biggest blunders of the globe side probably in the last 2 or 3 months. I hope he realises that was recorded.
My 5K, Rory.
Yeah,
But I've been trying to tell that guy
damn,
for
you
a
stole
week
my
now.
thunder. I was just about to get there for you, Zach. Right, absolutely correct, Rory.
Well, wait a second. Now, how does me admitting and acknowledging a well-known physical property of light, the Rayleigh Criterion, mean that Rory somehow owes some guy 5,000 pounds? I don't know. I think we ought to explore that a little bit, maybe look into it. So, let's cue up the music and have a listen. I don't know about you, but I'm thinking this is going to be good.
Well, the other day I put out this £1,000 Flat Earth Perspective challenge, and it was for these guys here because they keep telling everyone that the curvature calculators don't include perspective, and that's basically, it's either a lie or it's just speaking from ignorance. So I said, hey, just prove it, and I'll give you £1,000, or I can prove that they do, and if I'm wrong, I'll give you £1,000. Surprisingly, I haven't heard from either of them. Although up above there's a chat that I had with Anthony Riley a couple of days ago about this, and it was after I'd posted this challenge, and I thought I'd made it quite straightforward. But through the chat that I had with him, I realized that it's a more challenging topic than I first thought, like getting through to him. So you can read that chat while this is going on. Hopefully, I'm only going to talk for about 4 or 5 minutes, I think. Yeah, I tried to break it down as easy as possible, and he still didn't get it. Anyway, you'll see for yourselves. And the funny thing is, of course, that he thought I didn't get it. So one of us is wrong, and I don't know. All the people in my comments will think that I'm the one who's right. All the usual guys. It's a weird one, isn't it? It's a weird one. So we have to find out who's right and who's wrong. I'm going to simplify the challenge even more for them. Just again, here's some stuff that they said, their own genuine words, and where they're saying yes, the curvature calculators don't include perspective. So why can't they back that up? Why are they unable to back that up and show us?
Okay, so we have Rory here putting out a challenge to the flat earth concerning perspective and the curve calculators. Now, I know that most people in the flat earth, especially Nathan Oakley and Anthony Riley and my friend Phuket Word, really don't understand perspective very well, and so I can see that maybe there's some confusion there. But that wasn't what we were talking about, Nathan and I. What we were actually talking about was the Rolly Criterion, which is a property of diffraction of light through an aperture. We'll be discussing the Rayleigh Criterion a little bit later, but just to give you the basics, if you were to imagine 2 points of light represented by those 2 peaks on the left that are a certain distance apart, that will form an angle between your eyes and those 2 peaks that has a certain degree. Now, as that angle gets smaller because the peaks are getting closer together, there will be a certain point that those 2 points of light will blend into one, and that's called the critical angle. That critical angle is defined as an equation, which is the Rolly Criterion. And here is that equation. The critical angle is defined as 1.22 times the wavelength of light in meters over the size of the aperture in meters. We'll go over this in a bit, but let's go ahead and listen to Rory for a while.
Riley doesn't seem to understand very much about this at all, no matter how easy I try and make it. I was basically saying, well, look, if there's a building 100 feet away, 100 feet tall, and 200 feet away, 200 feet tall, which one appears higher? But he didn't seem to be able to answer that question. And this is what I realized. Like, I've seen this before, and we see this a lot with these guys, with both the two of them, is they pick up on something from somewhere, and it could be from a science book, it could be from some other guy, and they just latch hold of it, and they just repeat it, parrot it, if you will. And this is what they've done here, and I knew I'd seen this before somewhere. This guy, Taboo Conspiracy, we're talking over 1.5 years ago here, he put out this video where he said the curve calculators don't include perspective, and this is where they're getting their. This is the one they're parroting this time. just to look on a few things here. Look, Nathan Oakley in his eternal slideshow that plays while he's doing his chats has these images. And look, it's saying like, oh, you have to shrink the mountain before you do the calculation. And this is what Anthony's saying. So I've realized, okay, this is why they can't explain it or back it up, because they don't understand it. They don't even understand the mistakes themselves. But they've got this mistaken understanding that you have to shrink the mountain and then do the calculations. And this is why Rayleigh says you have to do it twice. So he's parroting taboo conspiracy. And yeah, that's why Rayleigh can't say anything about it, because he's just repeating the headlines, really. It's not confusing, it's just confused. And doesn't make any sense in rational reality or anything like that. They say the thing is wrong, when what they really mean is I don't understand it. But you know what? These guys just keep repeating it and repeating it, so they should back it up. Has anything happened in the chat over there? It's all relative, Rory. It can appear bigger or smaller. I mean, I was really trying to break it down simple as possible, and it was a bit of a shock to my system that I wasn't getting through to him. And then he got a bit ad hom, you know. But I guess a part of him knows that he can't back it up. I'm going to offer £5,000 if they can back it up. Now, it's a cheeky bet, because I know they can't, and I know that I can.
Okay, so let's make absolutely sure that we understand this. Now, Rory's bet is that the curve calculators do not account for perspective, not the Rolly Criterion, perspective. Let's let him go ahead and explain that a little further.
Go on, £5,000, boys. That's not to be sniffed at, is it? This is what I was trying to get to Anthony. I was like, well, look, if you're 100 feet from something and it's 100 feet high, 200 feet from the next building and it's 200 feet high, which one will appear higher? And it's all about angles, isn't it? You can measure this angle, you can literally measure it, or you could work it out, a bit of trig, and the larger angle will appear higher to you, not just on a camera, but in your eyesight. So, I mean, I tried to make it as simple as possible, and he just didn't get it. And then we can, this is mathematics. Some people say mathematics isn't reality. But it can tell us things about reality, can't it? We can measure these angles, and I can tell which one will appear highest in my view, whichever view it is. I know it's not the metabunk curve calculator, but the mathematics works exactly the same. But instead of giving us a hidden amount, it gives us the viewing angle. And I talked about this in my Rainier videos. I've got it all predicted here. The flat angles, very straightforward. Trigonometry. And the sphere angles is a bit more complex, but it's basically working out, you've got to do an isosceles triangle. So it's got two sides there, and you can work out the third side by using those two sides and the central angle. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. But you get your viewing angle. So that's what it got. And we've seen that this matches reality in my favorite. Look, Anthony's saying, I don't think you, Jabe, any clue what you're talking about. Why don't you go and see Nathan? He's like, I can't explain it. Talk to Nathan, because he'll just shout at you. He will help you see your stupidity. Oh, Anthony. Anyway, so yeah, the Rainier thing, what I've seen there, what we've all seen in my previous videos, is that the predicted angles for the sphere match the picture pretty much perfectly, and the ones for the flat Earth are all over the shop. The boys had a go at explaining it, but all they did was say he hasn't. Well, that thing that I showed you earlier was what they said. Basically, he hasn't calculated it properly. But I say, show me how to calculate it properly then, because if you're saying I'm wrong, then you must know the right way to do it. Anyway, point of this video is £5,000 on the table if you can prove that the curve calculators don't include perspective.
Well, that's a relief. I'm glad that Rory doesn't owe anybody £5,000. But as I said, we're going to come back to the Rolly Criterion, which is what Nathan and I were talking about. Nathan obviously doesn't know the difference between the Rolly Criterion and perspective. Perspective means things get smaller in the distance. The Rolly Criterion means that there's a certain critical angle between two objects in the distance that when you drop below that angle, you can't see them as two distinct objects. They become one object. Now let's go ahead and use this in a real-life example. Say we have a building that is 100 meters tall. The top of the building is 100 meters from the bottom of the building. Now under the Rolly Criterion, how far away does that building have to be before our eye cannot tell the difference between the top and the bottom of the building, and it just essentially fades into nothing? Now the reason that I say that is that when we're looking at a building, we look at the part of the building between the top and the bottom. That's what we see as the building. Now when those two values, the top and the bottom, come together as a single point, there's no building there anymore. Now if your eye is looking at the top and the bottom of a building, that will form a viewing angle in your field of view. And the viewing angle is the size of the building based on the distance it is away from you. Now as you get further and further from the building, that angle will decrease and get smaller. And it will reach a point where you can no longer distinguish the top and the bottom of the building. And that's the Rayleigh Criterion, and here is the formula for it. That angle in radians is 1.22 times the wavelength of the light in meters over the size of the aperture in meters. Now let's go ahead and use a real-life example. I'm going to leave this equation up here so that you can see it the whole time as I describe each part of it. Now, the wavelength of visible light at the top here is between 380 and 740 nanometers. A nanometer is 10 to the negative 9th meter. So, let's take a mid-range. Let's take 500 nanometers. That would be 500 times 10 to the negative 9. Now you divide that by the size of the aperture, which in our case is a pupil. A pupil is between 1 and 8 millimeters wide. We're going to take a mid-range of 5 just to make the math easier, and that's 5 times 10 to the negative 3 meters. We're going to divide those one into the other, and then we're going to multiply it by 1.22, and that will give us our critical angle in radians. Now you multiply a radian by about 57 to get degrees, and in this case I went ahead and did the math, and it works out to 0.007 degrees. Okay, so next we're going to go to the right triangle calculator. We're going to put in 100 meters, which is the height of the building, and that's leg A. We're going to put in the critical angle, which is 0.007 degrees, which is angle alpha there, and we're going to hit calculate. Recall that we're going to solve for leg B because leg B will be the distance from the observer that 100 meter high building will disappear due to the Rolly Criterion. And there, ladies and gents, is our answer. In order for a 100 meter high building to disappear due to the Rolly Criterion, it needs to be 818,511 meters away. Now, just so that we can finish this up, I'm asking all of the viewers of this video to go to Nathan Oakley's channel and ask him a question. How many kilometers are in 818,511 meters? Now, just to finish this up from my standpoint, a 100 meter high building on a globe Earth such as we live on will no longer be visible after 40 or 45 kilometers. Yet, if it disappears due to the Rayleigh Criterion, we could easily see that building at 500 kilometers. Now, another common problem in the flat Earth community is they fail to understand that the Rayleigh Criterion includes the entire building. There is no reason that the top 10 feet of a building will disappear due to the Rayleigh Criterion any more than the bottom 10 feet of a building will disappear. To suggest that this is why boats disappear hull first over the horizon at distances less than 500 kilometers is simply ridiculous. Thank you again for stopping by and checking out this video, and please make sure you go to Nathan Oakley's channel and ask him how many kilometers are in 818,000 meters, because he seems to have as much trouble making that conversion as Anthony Rayleigh has with triangles. Well, this is Bob the Science Guy signing out from Northern Michigan. Thank you for stopping by, and remember to like and subscribe to my channel.
This rabbit hole's too deep for me. Feel my brain getting real sore.